Welcome, Liz. I can't hear you.
Oh, what happened? Sorry about that. All right. So I was muted. It's always something. If it's not muted, it's lights. If it's not lights, it's cameras. It's always something with tech. But we're here. We're here for
We're off on another
on
adventure.
another adventure for sure. So this
We lost
episode.
Ron too.
Oh, we lost Ron. Well, we'll bring him back. So this is episode 31. And basically, we hope in a minute we're going to be talking to our multi-book author, Ron Mumford. But before we do that, we always like to share a tip here, Russ, as you know, at the beginning. And so today I thought I would share a publishing tip. And because that's, there are so many ways today to publish. I just wanted to share our favorite two or three. So if people are listening and they're trying to decide, well, where do I do or where do I publish my book? They got their manuscript finally written. Maybe they spent 6 months, a year, 2 years, 10 years, 20 years writing it. And now all of a sudden they got to publish. So the three main places we like to publish. We always like to start with Amazon because it's the easiest platform to get loaded to get up and get going. It's a platform that they take a percentage on the back end, so they don't charge you until they sell your book, and then they take 40% and you get 60%. If it's a ebook, they take 30% and you get 70% because it's a lot less money to digitalize or download an ebook than it is to actually print a book, which usually is $3 or $4, so depending on the number of pages. The second thing we want you to do is go to Ingram Spark and load your stuff there because they are the biggest wholesale distributor in the world. And so they have all the bookstores and the libraries and schools and specialty departments and things like that. And then the third thing, especially in the United States, is like the Barnes and Noble because they have 1,300 stores. So you can go on to BN Press and load your books there as well. Same thing, it's free. They do a 60-40 or maybe a 65-35 or something like that split, but it's a reasonable split. And it's an audience and a place and a platform that you want to be. So those are our three big ones. So you obviously can get on iBooks, you can get on Kobo, you can get on Smashwords or Lulu. There's all kinds of other platforms, but the three best platforms that we recommend are Amazon, Ingram Spark, and Barnes and Noble. So that's it for today. I hope y'all are listening and writing those tips down. So did Ron come back for us, or?
Well, he came back, but no, there's no. He's audio only. Ron, can you hear us?
Yeah. Let me try to do the phone thing again.
Yeah, get on with your phone now, Ron.
Yeah, let me try it again.
I'll remove you from here.
So we're working out our tech stuff here. I think, I'll tell you a little bit of backstory about Ron. So Ron and I met, I don't know, man, it's probably been 8 or 10 years now, but we had a mutual friend, a friend I grew up with and that Ron had met over the years. I think doing some PR work. And so we got introduced. And in the early years, I wasn't doing any fiction and Ron wasn't doing any children's books. So when we got together and started talking, he's publishing nonfiction books a little bit, but mostly fiction. And I was doing children's books and nonfiction and not publishing fiction books. So somebody'd call Ron and he'd say, we don't do children's books. Call my girl Liz, and they'd call me and ask me about fiction. And I say, I don't do fiction. Call my buddy Ron down in Houston. So that's kind of how we got started, isn't it, Ron? And we've just had a nice relationship ever since.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And now we do children's books.
Right. So they've added children's books. Another thing that Ron and his Third Coast does, his publishing company that he has, we'll let him give us a little bit of description about that here in a second. But he also does books to movies. So, and that's a lot of the reason because of his fiction books. He went out and pursued that fairly actively, and maybe he'll share that story with us. But Ron, before we get started, tell us a little bit about how you became a writer. Did you always write? or is that something that you did later in life?
Now, pretty much, I was a journalism major first at Texas A&M and then University of North Texas.
Uh-huh.
I was in the service where they made me an information specialist, which is a combat correspondent and combat photographer.
Great.
And I did that, and then I came out and I worked for magazines and newspapers and so forth, and finally decided to write a book.
Okay. Because
Wow.
I want to spend a lot of time, most of the time today, talking about your trilogy, Wayne's Angel, your trilogy, your fantasy, your fiction fantasy story, because I think that's really exciting. It's kind of different, and we want to promote that as much as we can, and then anything else that you want to talk about, we'll do that. So tell us a little bit about you. So when you first, because is that one of the first books you wrote, or you wrote the other books first?
I wrote the other books first.
Okay, because you got a nonfiction book, right?
I had a nonfiction book about finding your soulmate God's way, and then I had my first fiction book was Gray Justice.
Right.
And you just have to learn how to describe your books in what I call log lines. Actually, the film industry calls it log lines, to where you compare your book with movies to tell people what your book's about in one line.
Right.
For instance, the Gray Justice log line was Dirty Harry teams up with the Godfather to bend the law around Scarface. And that's pretty much it.
That's brilliant. I love that.
And when I started writing Wayne's Angel, and tell you the truth, I'd started writing something completely different. And I'm pretty much what I call a visual writer. Right. I just kind of close my mind and I go to a place that I call out there. And my characters just walk on the page, and I just pretty much describe them, all their quirks and uniqueness, and they start talking, and I take dictation.
I love it.
That's how Wayne's Angel started. I had no earthly idea I was going to write Wayne's Angel, and I had no earthly idea it was going to be a trilogy. Right. But when I finished the first book, I just thought, man, I love these characters. And there was so much wild and crazy stuff going on. I can't end it here, but what was ironic, each book ends at the end of the book with just a very little small twist at the end to tell you about the next book.
Right. It'll bring it into the next one. So here's the 3 books, we're kind of flashing up on the screen. So Wayne's Angel is book 1, Betwixt, right? Is book 2.
Yeah.
And then book 3 is the Z-Gen, The Last Generation. So
yeah, Liz, go back to Wayne's Angel. I want to tell you about the cover.
Okay.
Wayne's Angel, that is a photograph taken by the Hubble telescope that the NASA scientist entitled "The Hand of God."
Ah, okay.
And you notice that it's reaching up for this fireball. Go to Betwixt.
Let me go to Betwixt.
There's the fireball.
Right. Okay.
And then the very last book is Z-Gen, The Last Generation, and that's actually a picture taken by Scott Gifford, who was an astronaut on the International Space Station. It's called A New Morning.
Wow. That's amazing.
But in order to tell you very quickly about the books, I'm going to describe it in log lines.
Okay.
For instance, Wayne's Angel is basically, the whole trilogy is a love story. I didn't know that when I was writing it. But the log line for Wayne's Angel is kind of like a double log line. And the log line is Roadhouse, that had Patrick Swayze and Sam Elliott, meets Ghost.
Patrick and Demi,
But it's really Roadhouse and Ghost meet Touched by an Angel and Love Story with Ryan O'Neal and Ally McGraw.
Right.
Oh, wow.
And that's what is in the book. There's a lot of supernatural in it. So that's why I put in there ghost and touched by an angel.
Touched by an angel, yeah.
But this one goes much further. It's kind of like in Frank Peretti's series. He had like demons in one dimension and people in another. And it was a very successful series, like Piercing the Darkness and so forth. I decided to put the two dimensions together in a third dimension.
Okay.
So that my hero, Wayne Tyler, who is a real ladies' man, he's a musician, he's a singer and impersonator.
Is that Russ? Russ, is that you? You're sounding. I think you're talking about Russ here.
That's Roadhouse, yeah. And when he meets a woman that really loves him, he gets in Dutch with her, and finally she said, "Okay, you want to get back in my good graces? Write me a love song." And Wayne Tyler had no earthly idea what love was.
Right.
So
he has to learn. Yeah.
He tries his best to write it, but he can't. So he hot wires the boat, puts out to Redfish Island in Galveston Bay, finishes a whole bottle of tequila. He's really messed up then. It's about 4 a.m, so he throws the bottle of tequila in the bay and jumps in after it. So at this point, he is 14 feet underwater at 4 o'clock in the morning, drunk as a skunk, when this water spout picks him up and takes him to a place called Between.
Okay.
It's another dimension. So he's got a guardian angel there called Gordon. And when Wayne started, waking up a little bit, he said, he asked Gordon, and I tell you something, each day I write, I ask God to give me the words. And I don't know how many times I looked up and said, Lord, you're the greatest author I've ever seen. I would have never thought of that.
I never read it that way.
When he got to this place called Between, he looks up and he sees this 15-foot glorious angel, and he says, "Where am I?" And the angel says, "You're in a place called Between." And Wayne goes, "Between what? Day and night, life and death, heaven and hell?" And the angel looks at him and says, "Yes."
All of the above.
All of the above. Yeah.
So he tells Wayne, he says, you're, and this is not giving anything away, but just sort of following the book. He tells Wayne, he said, you're given a second choice. If you remember where you were when we pulled you out of there, he said, "Oh yeah, I was 15 feet underwater, drunk, probably was drowning." So the angel tells him, said, "You have 3 choices." And Wayne says, "Okay, what are my 3 choices?" And the angel says, "The first choice is to call upon the name of the Lord." To which Wayne says, "I have no earthly idea what the Lord's name is." So the second choice was that the angel gave him, said, "Well, you can always say, 'Send me back.'" And he said, "I don't think I want to be back. I drown, I die." He said, "What's my third choice?" And he said, "Face your demons." And he said, "How do I do that?" And the angel says, "With faith." And Wayne says, "Faith in who or what?" And it just goes from there. And he does face some demons. Some of these demons are funny as all get out. They're just not all bad. I mean, one of them's named Mama Chi from the Mesopotamian goddess Chima. And she just said, "I'm just a plump little pixie pumpkin. Who do you think invented beer and cheesecake?" That was me. And I mean, there's some really funny parts in this thing.
Right.
And then there's some demons that aren't so funny.
Right.
And since many of his demons were lust and pride and all that, he faced those types of demons up there. And the whole book goes through to what is love. And the angel told him, said, if you make it through your demons, you'll know what love is.
Yeah.
If you don't, the demons are going to claim your soul.
Yeah. So anyway, well, that's great. That's great. So we know that hopefully it's a good choice, because we got a book 2 and a book 3, and we don't want to give all of that away, but it is, Ron. And what we like to tell people is everybody has their own way, to write. I write a certain way. I'm kind of a journalism major like you, but I don't have the wild imagination that you do. But maybe I haven't called on it. Maybe I haven't asked for it. Maybe that's part of my problem. But, I can always sit down and write, who, what, where, when, how, and get started. And, and that's why I write a little bit more nonfiction than I do fiction. Although I am doing some children's books, but even my children's books are based on real people kind of thing. So I have great appreciation and admiration for people that have the wild imagination to bring all this about, or open their mind to being willing to accept, what gets sent to you. But we've had a lot of people, haven't we, Russ, say, well, the characters just take over. And it sounds like that's what happened with you.
Well, I tell you something, just for quick log lines, the log line on the second book, Betwixt, just Wayne's Angel on steroids. I mean, it is. And the second book introduces the most evil woman on the planet.
In the world, yeah. Heaven and earth, yeah.
Wow.
And then the log line for Z-Gen is very simple. World War III. So we go from a small little roadhouse in Clear Lake, Texas, where this is set, to like a national type scene, to an international scene. So one just grew into the next, and the ending of the book, if anybody could even guess remotely the end of the book, I'll send them a free book, but nobody can. And as a matter of fact, when I started pitching the trilogy on the third book, Z-Gen, I didn't even tell them what the ending was.
Right.
I said, you got to see it. And then, of course, when I started pitching the trilogy to several of the producers that I've got a long list with, Kevin Sorbo emailed me back, and he said, I'm interested. Call me at this number. So I called him at his home in West Palm Beach, Florida. He moved out of Hollywood because they blackballed him because he was a Christian. And he and his family lived there. And we got to talking about this. And he said, well, I'm just now bringing one out called one of the Left Behind books called Carpathia, Return of the Antichrist. And it just came out, a month or two ago. And he said, I want to option the Wayne's Angel trilogy. And I said, fine, I'll send you an option agreement. So I'm excited about that. Kevin Sorbo is a wonderful guy. I mean, I talked to him many times on the phone. He's just like you and I. He's trying to make a living, and
real people. Yeah.
Real people. Yeah.
So Ron, I have a couple of questions, because as you go through the book process, writing is one style of creative, and then, transferring that into a script or a produced outcome on film, that's kind of a journey in itself. So is this something that you get help with, or you just, you've practiced this and you've developed this skill in a way that allows you to manage that script and develop the production of the book?
I'm glad you asked me that, Russ. Back in the late 90s, I was a literary agent. Okay. And I had other clients, and I went to Lower Manhattan, called on all the big five, and found out what a useless effort that was. If you didn't have a big following or a celebrity, forget it. And then I got a handful of screenplays, and that was before the internet. And I went to Hollywood, and I just started calling on some people. A couple of people opened some doors for me. And then this one lady said, oh, and be sure and call on the indie producers. And I said, the what? She said, indie producers.
Yeah.
And So I found some indie producers like in little strip centers next to a 7-Eleven. And walked in there, and you have to know log lines on everything, because I pitched about 7 scripts in about 2 minutes. They'd say, "What else you got? What else you got?" So anyway,
they were probably looking for something very specific for their production style.
Yeah, they are. But here's the deal. A lot of this is real important. There's over 150,000 screenplays written every year. Everybody in California and their dog and cat has a screenplay. Getting that screenplay to a producer in California is almost impossible. You have to go through ICM or AAC or some big agency. You can't do it. I tried, and I'd get a letter from their legal department saying, "We are returning this unopened." And so I got to thinking about it. What actually I did, and this is the best way to go. You can't go to major studios. You can't go to Netflix. You can't go to HBO and some of these big streamers. You have to be a producer to do that. And producers always work with directors and screenwriters that they like. So what I did, and actually I kind of Googled it, I wrote screen treatments of each one of the books, and I registered it at Writers Guild of America West in California. Not a screenplay, but a screen treatment. A screen treatment is about a 7 to 14 page synopsis that lists, the locations, the main characters, Act 1, which is the introduction, Act 2, which is the conflict, and Act 3, which is the conclusion. That's it. And it's, like I said, 10 to 14 pages. So if a producer or a director likes it, they don't have to buy the screenplay, because screenplays have about a 50-50 chance of getting past one person. But if they like the concept, the screen treatment, and they decide to option the book, then the director knows I can work with a screenwriter that I know and trust, and we're like-minded.
So it doesn't lock them into the actual screenplay that's attached to a screenwriter that they may not like to work with.
No. And the only reason you register,
that's brilliant.
Yeah.
The only reason that you register the screen treatment with Writers Guild of America West is it so nobody can steal it. Plus, it shows a degree of professionalism that you at least had it registered there.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what you send out. You send out a pitch. And as far as getting producers, here's a God thing. About 3 years ago, I was having so much trouble selling any of our authors' books. And I just finally said, "Lord, if you don't want me to do this, let me know. I'll shut it down, because I'm just beating my head against the wall."
Yeah.
And immediately I get this thought, books to film. And I went, okay, I know a little bit about that, but I don't know any producers or directors or development people. And within 2 seconds again, the word LinkedIn popped up in my head. And I had no earthly idea why, but I went to LinkedIn. I found one producer. I hit connect with him. He connected. And then when he connected, I went down to see his friends, and there was 10 more producers under there, and I connected with them. When I had about maybe 50 producers and directors on an Excel sheet, and that's incidentally, you get their personal email address. Yeah. And I thought, well, I'm just going to see what I can do with one of my West Coast authors. He's another Mickey Spillane. He's a mystery writer. And I sent it out to about 50 producers. And within 15 minutes, my phone rang and had a LA area code. and this guy with a very English accent said, "Oh, Ron, this is so and so. I love that book. I want to option it." And then I had to go to the trouble to check him out on IMDb, and some of these people are would-be producers, and some of them are terrible, some of them are nice, some of them are the real deal. And over the 3 years, I came up with almost 1,000 producer, directors, and development people. So when I get ready to pitch a book, man, I can pitch it in a hurry.
That's right. That's right. So
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
yeah, and so but Ron put in the time. He he hustled things up. He figured out how the process works. He figured out what he could and couldn't do, and so we're very pleased with his success. And what do you got now, Ron? Yeah, you got your own option, right? You got probably 7 or 8 or 10 others, and you got 3 or 4 in the works, right?
Well, I've got a children's book that was award-winning by Kathleen Shields. She's won every children's book award you can think of.
Yeah.
We've got hers option. We've got Grave Justice that I told you about. That's option. We have 3 books by one of my authors on the West Coast. It's kind of like a Mickey Spillane.
Yeah.
They're optioned. And then we got another, it's kind of like a true spy book, but all the spies, if you've ever dealt with people that were really spies, they always write it in fiction form because they don't want anything to come back on them.
Right.
But I got one from a university professor that was actually there. He won't admit it, but he was.
He had to
And
be, yeah.
he wrote a book called Cyber Wars. And he was in Russia when Putin first started coming to power. And just by accident, I mean, this guy's a PhD in Russian economics, and they sent him to Russia just to write white papers, at the fall of the Russian Empire. And just by happenstance, he talked to some people that told him all about how Putin was going to use the internet, which just started around 1999, to disrupt American elections and our economics and our military. And he came back and wrote the book, and we got that option to another producer. So we just look for really great stories.
Yeah. It's all about the story. Yeah.
It is
all about the stories.
Yeah. Well, Ron, how should people get in touch? Should they go to thirdcoastbooks.com? Is that the best way to?
Yes. Our website is www.thirdcoastbooks.com, and they can see video trailers, they can see news releases, they can see our submission page. We're really looking for some romance. We're looking for some nonfiction, and every book that's sent in goes to our editorial board, which composes of my partner in Wales, Ian Gorman, and Dr. Faye Walker, who is here in Houston. She's a PhD in English, and they pretty much decide on which books we're going to publish. And we're open for any really great book.
Right.
And by great book, that's in the eye of the reader,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but we've seen a lot. We know what a good book is. We know what a good story is because we've been in the business long enough. You've been in the business. I've been in the business. Russ has been in it long enough. We recognize a good story when we see it or hear it, or even when we hear a synopsis of it. So that's a great thing. And then all of Ron's books are available. You can buy them there at thirdcoastbooks.com. You can find him on Amazon. You can just search Wayne's Angels or Ron Mumford. I'm going to spell that R-O-N, Ron Mumford, M-U-M-F-O-R-D, because Ron, a lot of people, we pull this as a podcast and it goes out to 11 podcast platforms.
Right.
So somebody may be listening to it later on. Right now we're live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. and the show is live for 24 hours, and then it gets archived to our YouTube channel, so people can always come back there. And then, of course, we're always promoting it, and we're asking people to go back and watch the interviews and stuff. So, so we appreciate you being on so much. I mean, if you had some advice for somebody that was kind of maybe just starting out, because a lot of our listeners are, you know, they want to write a book, or maybe they're in the early stages of it, but, you know, they're just looking for a good tip or a gold nugget about what to do. What would you tell them?
There's two things I would tell them. Whatever genre it is that you think that you want to write in, read some of those books. If you're a romance writer and you want to write romance, buy some romance books and see how other people write them and everything.
Yeah.
And secondly, once you decide what you're going to do, never ever start without an outline. Now, the outline is subject to change, but if you have a beginning, a middle, and an end, you'll never get writer's block.
Right. Yeah.
You never will.
You always have a direction to go.
Absolutely. Sometimes I know the ending of a book, but I'm not sure how to get there.
Right. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you know how to ask for help, though, Ron.
Yeah.
So God help me.
Well,
and that's it. And the other thing too, Ron, that we tell people is, if you get stuck, go to the next thing. You know, especially like you say with nonfiction, if you're writing a chapter and you got 10 chapters, you got your outline, and you get chapter 1, chapter 2, and then you get stuck on chapter 3. Well, don't just stay stuck and don't give up. Go ahead and write chapter 4, chapter 6, or maybe chapter 8, and then you'll get sparked, and you'll come back and you know exactly what to write for chapter 3. So
yeah, and sometimes people get too wrapped up in editing. To begin with, writers are terrible editors, and editors are terrible writers. And when they start doing that, they say, "Well, I really got bogged down. And what's your best advice?" And I say, "Finish the book."
Yeah, just finish the book.
Finish the book.
Yeah.
Don't even think about everything. Finish the book. We have editors.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, Ron, I'm going to be in Houston later, probably next month. I'm in Texas now, and I lived in Houston for quite a few years, and so it's always great to come back and visit friends and family. So love to catch up with you when I'm there. And
hey, I'd love to. You got my phone number and everything, so
yeah.
Love to do that. I love talking to people in the publishing and writing world. They're some of my favorite friends.
Yeah,
well,
sure.
It's really great to be able to connect and hear stories, and I think we could probably have Ron back.
Yeah, we do need to have Ron back, talk about
definitely.
a little bit more about Third Coast and some of your other authors, Ron, and then we'll have them on as well.
Yeah, and I'd love to see y'all get. There's 2 other people that I'd love to see y'all get in. One of them is Kathleen Shields,
Right.
the award-winning. You've talked to her, and another one, believe it or not, is we have 2 pastors at Lone Star Cowboy Church in Montgomery. Pastor Randy and his wife, Pastor Darla. And Pastor Darla, she has written the most wonderful book about healing, about people that have been sexually abused.
Right.
And it's a wonderful healing book. And I'll put it this way, she had a tough life, and it's based on her own experience.
Yeah, but she's gotten to the other side of it. Yeah, we've got a great friend too that's got a story called "Because No One Asked: Healing Through Telling," and it was the writing of it. It's the writing it down is what really, helped her break through.
She was actually on Focus on the Family. That has a viewership of like 10 million people. And she told her whole story, what happened to her, believe it or not, a pastor and a pastor's wife. And I'm not kidding you. You talking about an explosion in our little bitty church. Some of the people said, well, you shouldn't go around telling this. She said, I want to go around telling this because I was healed and I want them to be healed.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
It is a wonderful workbook. So if you ever decide to bring Pastor Darla on, and she is a trip, I'm telling you. But
I love it. We're looking
she
at
is a real trip.
exactly who we're looking for in that, Russ. We love people.
Yeah,
That's right.
absolutely.
We love tricky people, man.
We said, what is it? We're attracted to crazy. What is it? What's about that? We just love people that are different, don't we? We say, we sure
Of
do.
course.
Come on down.
Well, I truly believe, Ron, that everybody has a gift, everybody has a story, and everybody has a message that they can share with the world. And there's somebody out there waiting to hear that, for permission to feel the way they are feeling. And there's a lot of people out there that are broken and healing in the process between one and the other, and we all need a message to support that process. So I think it's really important that we continue to share these stories and also be inspired by people like yourself that have gone through the process. And thank you for serving our country and documenting some of that stuff, because I know that that's a painful process as well. So thank you for all the work that you've done in the journalism side and documenting the history that we have to go through.
Yeah, the Army stuff.
Well,
sure. Well, Ron,
thank both of y'all for being my friend.
Yeah, we thank you for being on with us. We'll have you come back on and talk a little bit more about Third Coast. Maybe we'll get Ian on, and if you want your other partner there or whoever, y'all can tell us a little bit about Third Coast. You can talk about some of your other authors, and then we will get them in the schedule and be talking to them in the future sometime.
We'd love to, and that was good advice you gave everybody about being on England Spark. So, and any bookstore can order. We also have all of our authors on England Spark.
Yeah, for sure. Because people, there's a little bit of a fee to that, and it takes a little bit longer. It's a little more complicated process, but once you've done it, you can do it. It's just when you've never done it before that it seems a little overwhelming. So, well, Ron, we appreciate you so much jumping on. We want people to go out and check out Wayne's Angels, the trilogy.
Yeah.
You can find that on Amazon. You can find that on thirdcoastbooks.com. And we are here every Tuesday talking about the author adventure and sharing these great interviews with authors like Ron Mumford. So come back and see us next week when we'll have another great interview. And if you missed some of our interviews, you can always go back and find them at our YouTube channel at Author Adventure. Just Google that. Just put that in the YouTube and put in Author Adventure, and our channel will show up. Thanks so much. Y'all have a great day.
Take care.
Y'all too. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.